What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show. Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. We're continuing on with season 3. I'm Will Schneider coming to you from New York City. There's my brother from another mother over there, Jon McCaskill. We in Colorado Springs today, John?
I am. Yes, sir.
Right. Good. So welcome to the show. We have a great guest today, Molly Carmel, with a great book, Breaking Up with Sugar. And this episode is not just for people that are this is an episode for anybody that's struggling with sugar. So regardless of shape or size or age, this episode is for you. So thank you for joining us today. John, I think we have a couple announcements before we bring Molly on. So we actually have really special announcements.
Yeah,
so.
super special announcement. Yeah, really for our watchers, our guests here, our listeners to the podcast later. Have you ever considered going on a wellness retreat, specifically a plant medicine wellness retreat? Well, our friends and one of the companies I work with, Evolutio, a wellness and leadership company, has recently been fully acquired by Beckley Waves, which is the venture capital arm of the Beckley Foundation, the world's leading psychedelic research nonprofit. And Will and I are joining former Army Ranger and McKinsey consultant and a former guest on our show, the guest on the Trust episode, Evolutio's founder, Neil Markey, at an upcoming Reflect, Reset, Rewire Evolutio retreat. That's a 5-day entheogenic wellness retreat focused on rewiring neural pathways, finding equanimity, creativity, and resetting the nervous system. The retreat is at the Imaloa Institute in Costa Rica, and it's from November 19th through the 23rd. We'll be sharing about the retreat leading up to it while we're there and doing an episode or two after the retreat all about the experience. But here's the thing, there are still spots available and we would love to meet you there. And we'll drop the link in the comments here in a second. That's our one announcement for this week. We're super excited about it.
I know this is the first time that John and I are going to meet in person, but
That's
not just like in like Colorado or in New York, or we're going down to Costa Rica. We're going to do this retreat together, which I'm really excited about, John, and to really dive into, so much of the stuff that can come out during this retreat. So without further ado, I'm just going to, we'll bring up Molly, our special guest today. There she is. And today's guest, Molly Carmel, is a licensed clinical social worker, is a leading addiction and eating disorder therapist, and founder of The Beacon by MC, which offers individual and group solutions, helping people break free of their destructive relationship with food and dieting. Known for her irreverent, straight talk, no chaser attitude, she's also the author and innovative book, Breaking Up with Sugar, a plan to divorce the diets, drop the pounds, and live your best life, and the host of podcast, What You're Craving. Molly has made it her life's mission to help people find a sustainable solution to the battle of obesity and related eating disorders, After battling an eating disorder for over 20 years and finding no solution in available treatment, Molly began her professional path and has never looked back. Molly's work has also been featured on The Today Show, Dr. Oz, Dateline NBC, Anderson. This is an incredible resume here.
It's so long,
360, all good. You're also an Extreme Makeover, as well as People Magazine and the Los Angeles Times. And also, Molly is a good friend of mine. We work together here in New York City. I've actually had the opportunity to teach at the Beacon, her wonderful staff. And we're so excited to have you, Molly. I've been looking forward to this episode all season long. And thank you for joining us today.
It's so nice to meet you, John. You're part of our crew. I want to go on this retreat. It sounds
Come on. We'd love to have you. Join us.
Yeah. Oh, I have a dog in the room, by the way. which is
Neil said the retreat right now is men heavy, so we would love to add some
count me in.
feminine energy. Come on.
Wow. Well, see, we're just here to talk about sugar, but maybe we're going to heal me too. Hi, guys. So good to be here. So good to see you. Love you, Will. Love you, John.
Love having you.
Love
here.
you too, Molly. Thanks for coming on the show. Absolutely. Well, tell us, like, Molly, how did you bring yourself to this work?
Will.
Whoa. Oh my God. Did I do it, John? It's usually you.
Yes, normally me, man. But Molly, normally what we do is we kick the show off with a grounding practice. And I love that you bring up meditation and mindfulness in your book and how important, diaphragmatic breathing is and how you can just breathe and heal. Just doing that.
I'm also breath, just on a side note, side hustle. My side hustle is breath work, Tibetan bowl healing,
yes,
Reiki, shamanism. So that's my side hustle. I don't like to bring it up front because sometimes it freaks people out, but not on a show like this. So
not on a show no, trust me. If our audience was ever going to be freaked out, they would have been freaked out long ago.
I love her more. So I'll disclose that up front. Yeah. Grounding practice. I love to say, let's arrive.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what this grounding practice is for. I'm obviously a hot mess right now, so John's going to lead the grounding practice.
We're just excited, Will. We're just in our emotion mind.
Energized.
People think emotion mind is so negative, but Will and I are an emotion mind. We're like, I love you. I haven't seen you. Let's talk. It's not always like, I want to binge eat. I'm like, I'm so excited to see my friend, but we got to arrive. Good thing John's here.
That's right. So we'll get settled and get into a position that's comfortable for you, whatever that looks like. Back straight, but not necessarily stiff, just straight. And then just bring your attention to your breath. Let's just do some simple breath work. Nothing fancy, just some simple breath work, focusing on the breath. Let's breathe out nice and deep. Breathe all the air out. Breathe in through your nose. Really expand those lungs. Hold at the top. And release nice and slow. Relaxed. Nice and slow. Breathe in deep in through your nose. Hold at the top. And relax. Breathing out nice and slow. Breathing deep in through your nose. Noticing the air passing your nostrils and expanding those lungs. Hold at the top and relax. One more. Breathing in deep. Pushing that diaphragm down, letting those lungs expand. Hold at the top and relax. And now just breathe naturally and in your own time. Maybe bring some movement back into your body. Start to blink your eyes open if they're closed or refocus. Simple, just a few breaths, and hopefully we're back focused and de-stressed. And here we are.
I feel like
Molly.
a new person.
There you go.
Also, John, also a little bit less, not to say it's negative judgment to say I'm excited, but perhaps I'm going to be doing my better work less excited. I think it's such an interesting, because I think everybody thinks about mindfulness as help for negative emotions, right? But we're not in wisdom when we're highly excited about something. Think about sort of dating, maybe we're in that lust and love. That's not wisdom either, right? So it's actually, I think it's such an interesting experience of me and Will being so excited, right? So bring it down. Where are we?
Bring it down.
Yeah.
Right. I love
it.
Arrive.
Focused excitement, right? Focused excitement. Focused enthusiasm.
I think there's such a meditation as a healing for negativity and I believe you me, I say it I wake up with my plug in the wrong jack every morning, and I got to take it out and put it in the right one or the best one for me. That's what my morning practice is, only about me waking up like an insane person every morning, right? And the practice of that. But it's an interesting idea that it's also, when we get too involved in high, more positive emotions, it really does impact our judgment and maybe our wisdom.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I have a tendency with that enthusiasm to go fast. I'm like, oh, and I can't, like, the words are jumbled and the thoughts are all like all over the place. So yeah, it's like, the grounding practice on our show we've been doing, it's a staple since the very, very beginning. And it really helps to ground the show, but it's also an opportunity for people to understand, like, if they've never really used the breath as a tool to relax the mind and the body and to regain focus and get grounded, as a great reminder, or just a great, like, oh, hey, like, this really makes a big difference. So
I'm more than one occasion I've been referred to at my office as a fire hose or a Tasmanian devil. So yeah. We tell the truth on this show, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. That's our little slogan. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. So
yeah, exactly.
we tell the truth. We drop the F-bomb. We just have a lot of fun and completely raw.
Bring all that straight talk and no chaser attitude. I mean, that's exactly.
That's me.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, tell us, Molly, like, so how, like, I mean, your book is amazing. You tell your story in the book, but just give us a little brief intro to, how you found yourself to this work and where it's taken you, I guess.
Yeah, I'll try to do that short. I'm a wounded healer. I mean, legit, like, that's, I think, like, the quickest way to say it is I'm a wounded healer. I think that, I come to the work that I do as a function of trying to heal myself or trying to find a solution to a problem that I couldn't find healing in on my own. And so to me, like, the work I do it doesn't really, I mean, when it feels like work, I'm not doing it right. When it feels like my calling, I'm doing it right. And, so to me, like, I suffered with an eating disorder for the better part of 20 years without being able to find solution. First of all, I think biologically I was absolutely born, I was born susceptible to addiction in so many ways. And then I had a traumatic event happen right before I was 3. My father passed away, and like so many people, and so many traumatized young, I turned to food as a drug very, very early. And then that sort of became the thing. Right. And so, and then at the age of 7, and I have to say, I say this on podcasts a lot and people have like a big reaction to it. And I don't know if it's a function of the work I've done or just, I think it's a function of the work I've done both professionally and personally. But like at 7, my mom didn't know what to do. And she sent me to a nutritionist, and people are like, can you believe that? And I'm like, yeah, she was outmatched. Like, she didn't know what to do. She had binge eating in the 70s, the 80s, like, there's nothing else to do. And so, and unfortunately, or I could arguably say fortunately, sitting here being able to help thousands and thousands and thousands of people, it also started my relationship with compulsive dieting and thinking that the solution is in the diet, which, I'm writing a second book about right now. I think our addiction to diet culture is arguably worse than our addiction to sugar. And our addiction to sugar is really bad. And so my path, as so many wounded healers, and I think effective wounded healers, got like really gnarly, like really ugly, really gnarly. I ate my way through bariatric surgery. I went on every single diet. I went to every single length that a human being would go to try to negotiate their weight. And I saw it as a weight problem. And I certainly saw it as an eating disorder, but more through the lens of a weight problem, which again is my second book. And I have to say, when I was 13 years old, I was at a weight loss camp having like the time of my life, but also having this knowing that they weren't teaching me anything. They were restricting my food and running me. And then Josh Cohen was my boyfriend. It was like the time of my life. You know what I'm saying? But I had a knowing inside of me, 2 knowings. Number one, I was going to go home and gain all my weight back, which in Miss Pekavik's 9th grade home ec classroom, the button to my skinny jeans popped off, and the shame and the demoralization was back. And I was back in the hopper of gaining weight and going back into that ugly, ugly cycle of binge eating, restricting, and all of this. And I also knew something happened to me in that moment. And I only think of it as like really divine intervention. I can say on a show like this, something in my head's like, this is yours to fix. You have to help people, and this is what you have to do. And so it was this really interesting path for me, because while I was doing all these incredibly like destructive things to myself and trying to find my own solution, I was going to social work school. I was getting trained in addictions. I was working at weight loss camps. I was doing all of these things that none of it made sense at the time. All of it makes sense right now.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, so slowly but surely, and so I started the first ever therapeutic boarding school for adolescent obesity. And that is important in the story because that's really where I was first trained. And the model they had there was, horrible. I didn't know it at the time. I was just being trained, and it was this very low fat eating and calorie counting. And I found myself just binging on like honey mustard pretzels and fat-free brownies. And I was working out so much at the time, it didn't impact. And so slowly but surely, as I started my own clinics, I was gaining weight hand over fist, and I didn't know what to do. And I was binging my brains out, and I was sick. I was spiritually sick, I was emotionally sick.
Wow.
I was sick. And, listen, I mean, I'm trained. I just, sugar was my solution. I didn't want it to be my problem,
Yeah.
And oddly enough, my brother, he's 13 years younger than me. He's a big guy, and he went on paleo. At this time, I'm working at an eating disorder center, and I'm gaining weight hand over fist, and I'm miserable. And the double life of it all, honestly, the spiritual pain of a double life of like, yeah, you really should work on this. And then I'm going home and binging my brains out. It was just like more than my soul could handle.
And when is this? What's the date on this, or what time, what year, or something like that, just to get time for?
I'm stamping it about 15 years ago.
Okay,
14
got it.
years ago. And so my brother goes on paleo. I see him be so successful on paleo, and I think, well, I need a quick fix. Like, this is not working. And so like another diet feels like a great idea, obviously. But I give up sugar. I give up a lot of things at the time that I actually add back in because I don't think it's healthy. But I give up sugar, and two things happen. Number one, I go through detox, and I'm an addictions therapist. So I was like, oh, this is curious. I'm sweating, and this is a big deal. And then the other thing that happened is that my life got a lot better, right? Like I stopped having cravings, and I really released weight kind of easily, and I slept better. And so all these things started happening. And so then I was like, oh, yikes, this is really the solution. And then I started getting training and got mentorship. And then I tell you something else. I walked into work one day and I flipped my clinic on its ass. Like I was like, because the other thing I noted when I woke up was that a lot of the people in my clinic were white knuckling just like me, right? Like they weren't doing well. They were certainly losing weight, things like that, but they weren't getting well. And once I started to understand the food addiction model, and then again, by the way, like, and the food addiction model that was being used was actually not something I was interested in either, because I've been a substance use therapist for so long also that like, food addiction model as I knew it was highly abstinent, like no this, no that, no this. And nobody was talking about the sort of lapse inevitability. I put it into human terms, like the idea that like, it's not if you're going to fuck this up, you're going to fuck this up. Like when you're talking about food, like you're screwing it up, like period. And so that diet mentality and that abstinence violation of us, like, what you have a bad day on a diet, you go off for 12 years. It's not, we don't really use our minds. You have a fight with your wife. You're not like, we're getting divorced, right? You have a bad day at work, quit your job, but somehow we like eat a brownie when we're trying not to eat sugar. And then we're like eating for 12 years. It's so crazy how we are. And so I had all this information, and once I really saw a long-term relationship viability in not eating sugar, I just knew I had to, and I just get that I really have an understanding of how we can make this to be a relationship. People are not looking at food like a relationship. They're looking at it like a diet.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that the paleo, like, I didn't realize paleo. There's no sugar in paleo, and that was when the light bulb went on.
Paleo. This is like how I saw paleo. Like,
oh, okay.
Actually, they use like a lot of those sugars, like coconut sugars. Like to me, like it's all to my brain reads any sugar I put in my body as sugar. Like monk fruit, like it doesn't matter. Don't even get me started on artificial sweeteners. And
we're going to get you started on that. We want to.
I don't know if you guys know this fun fact about me, but I see a small caseload of people, and I actually treat a lot of men, and I always have. And it's a really interesting struggle, men and food addiction. And I have to say this, I don't know how quiet it is, but men and diet addiction is pretty crazy. And successful men and diet addiction, and especially men in finance, men who have because I actually think it's the same I think it's the same process addiction with dieting that you're looking to score. Like I think the scale addiction with men is very intense. And I treat a lot of men who do hedge funds and are CEOs. And I think that same go get it and high you get off of the deal and you get off of the, I think they're all very aligned from a brain chemistry perspective. Also very interesting data on binge eating that when we restrict, it cues the brain to binge. It's like it's a secret formula. And I have a lot of men that are like, well, I didn't eat breakfast. I'm like, yep. So you can eat at night, like not fooling me, man. So
Yeah.
I have a lot to say. That's just sort of those are my opening remarks.
I want to jump in on a couple of things there. One, in the book, obviously breaking up with sugar is what we're here to talk about. I love the title, Breaking Up with Sugar. Instead of quitting sugar, instead of, giving it up, we're breaking up with it because you talk about it in the book as an abusive relationship. As, you have this relationship, you break up with the spouse, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whatever, and then that boyfriend or girlfriend comes crawling back and they're so sweet to you, like, oh, something's going to change, and you bring them back in. Yeah. And that's exactly what sugar does in our lives. And I love the way that you talk about that. And then the other thing that you talked about there is those high performing, successful men is who you specifically mentioned, is they're often looking for that next dopamine fix. And you talk about how sugar affects our dopamine receptors in the book. And actually, if you could go into that a little bit, because a lot of our listeners, that they seek those dopamine, and myself included. I'm a dopamine addict, if you will.
Me too.
And I think sugar is a part of that.
I'm a lot of addict, but yes.
So I'd love to hear more about, one, the relationship, how you talk about it that way, and then two, the dopamine receptors being dulled by sugar.
I think I've been an eating disorders therapist so long that to not bring in, it's like it's slowly introed in the book about this this diet addiction that we have. But I think the reason I would not say quit sugar, and I would say breaking up with sugar, is because I think until we conceptualize food as a relationship that we have, we can't have a healthy relationship with it. So if we're continuously thinking about sugar as a means to lose weight, and I think even in some ways good or bad, until we're thinking about food as a relationship that we have, right? Until we're thinking about it like that, we actually can't get well, because we have to be in a relationship with food. And I say that in the book. There's two relationships that we need to have in this world. And one is with food and one is with ourselves. Am I right? Yeah. So it's like, and I say, so my mother has this phrase that says messy room, messy life. And I always say to patients, messy food, messy life. Like I was in session today with a woman who's having all of these relationship problems with her kids and her this, and she's crossing boundaries, and people are crossing boundaries with her. And my first question is, how's your food? And it's messy. And I was like, when you put down the boundaries on your food, you allow for all of this chaos to come in. It's like really interesting. And I think, like I hate these words, self-love and self-care. And yet I do think that the strategies and the methods in which we create a healthy and loving relationship with food actually teach us how to care and love for ourselves. So I think there's like a real parallel there. Now, so
you actually, just to support what you're saying, Molly, in the book, you
guys do so nicely.
What's that? Oh,
so many podcasts where no one's ever read my book. I'm so prepared.
Oh no, I'm gonna quote right from your book here, which talks about just support what you're talking about as far as that relationship, right? And this is I forget what chapter, but the power struggle in your brain. And it goes, you're living in two contradictory thoughts that are in a battle. You know that sugar makes you feel good in the moment, but you also know that sugar is harming every part of your body, mind, and spirit. What a dilemma. What makes matters worse is this battle is super painful for your brain, which is wired to avoid pain at all costs. In my business, we call this discomfort cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance is fascinating too, because you know what else is like, just to go off topic for like climate, like our climate dilemma is rooted in that too.
Wow.
Right? Like it's easier for me to just drink out of a plastic cup than it is for me to think about the impact that that plastic cup had. Like that's
Sure.
what, you know what I mean? So dissonance is, because like if you hang with me a lot, I'm always like half of my life is like, oh, the dissonance of it all. Dissonance because it's a pleasurable thought to have a sip out of a plastic cup. And it's a displeasurable thought to think, oh God, if I have to go get a glass cup and I'm getting a glass cup because that's better for it's too painful to think about. And so in many ways, thinking more about the pleasure of what it would feel like to be sugar-free is going to benefit you more than thinking about all the pain that sugar causes. There's a lot of chapters in that too, but it's actually what we're really thinking about in general right now. Does that mean so the
Absolutely.
dissonance of it all, it's like, and I think the other thing about sugar, which I read about in the book, is like, I mean, and Jon, I think is someone who really shows it, like it's installment plan pain. Like it doesn't, and that's the thing about type 2 diabetes. Like they're not cutting off your foot till way down the line. So your doctor can say to you, you're pre-diabetic, and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. And then 3 minutes later, you have the mochi ice cream going in your mouth because it doesn't hurt in the moment, right?
Right.
And the
That's that
pleasure
dissonance.
of the mochi ice cream in a dopamine receptor way, that immediate right now, here it is like, yeah, okay, I'm sure they're going to cut off my foot. And what's really interesting, in my humble opinion, is when Mike Bloomberg, many years ago,
Oh, the big gulps.
He said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the calories of all these foods on the wall, and that's going to make people not order them. And as we know from cognitive dissonance, it didn't make a shit of difference. Nobody cared. And I think most of you are like, yeah, I'm sure, or I'll deal with it later. I mean, it's the American way. Like that's never going to help somebody.
Well, take us through that like, you know, because we said addiction. So maybe some people don't understand like how you can be possibly addicted to a food or sugar. Like, so, you know, when you're breaking down and speaking to your, and helping your clients understand this relationship to sugar, and it's an addictive relationship, like what does that addiction look like? You know, how would you define it like therapeutically?
And in an aside, like it's highly controversial.
Two addictions.
It's addictions. Yes, you guys are such good students. Gosh, you really incentivized me to be on this show.
We love you, Molly. I made Jon read this book because don't fuck this up, Jon. I know Molly. I love Molly. We got to do this.
Oh my God. I'm honestly like, there's people like I've been on some podcasts like, can you have fruit? I'm like, okay, so you didn't open any pages.
Yes, I know.
So, you can eat mangoes, it. Just don't drink it.
That's your go-to. Mangoes are your go-to, then, Molly.
Yes to fruit. Yes to fruit. So let's talk about the first addiction, which is a substance addiction. So here's the thing, like nobody would be happier to have it not be addiction than me, because I have all 12 out of 12. So in chapter 4 of that book that I wrote, Breaking Up Sugar, there's a quiz. And if you don't want to buy the book, that's fine by me. You can just go Google Yale food addiction scale. And I just made a quicker, cuter version of it. But the problem, I mean, listen, when we can define a problem, we can define a solution, right? So if you have the problem, then the solution's probably going to work for you. And there are these like 12 criteria from the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, from the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And I think the other thing that's really helpful to me when there's a measure is how badly do I have the thing? Because there's people who score 3 out of it. And it's like, okay, then maybe you don't need to deal with this, or maybe you want to deal with this now because it's a progressive illness. So what are some of the things? Like, eating more than you intend to, right? Which is like, okay, I'm having one cookie. I'll have a serving of Thin Mints tonight, and that's all I'll have, right? And then you're sort of going back and going back and going back. Like that's addiction, right? Eating despite knowing it's bad for you. Like a doctor, I mean, the story I just told you, right? A doctor saying, hey, this is pre-diabetic, man. You got to cut down the sugar. And you're like, definitely. And you would like sign it in blood while you're in the doctor's office. And then you're like mochi ice cream in the bathroom. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. One that I also really, really love is, and I mean, eating more than intended. One that I do love is that, and I don't know if this applies to you guys, but is not doing things as a result. Like, so it impacts your social and recreational activities. I've had a lot of people that have stopped dancing, have stopped riding horses, things like that. I mean, there's so many of them, but there's real criteria of this. And I think there's eating more than you intend to, and then there's withdrawal from it, which I think happens to a lot of us. So withdrawal would be almost the same story, which would say that I need to go get it. And I think there's just so many. I mean,
I think you said something about, like in the book, you said something about crossing the street without looking both ways in order to go get whatever it was you were craving, and you got the 12 out of 12 on the
I got a 12 out of 12. I mean, if there was 13, I would win that game.
I'm sure I was right there, pretty close with you.
And I think I do this other exercise in the book, which I really love, which I think, and especially I know this is, I think for men to really look at, I have everybody do like a diet history and really look at, and I think, because I don't know why, I mean, I don't know. Look at all the different ways that you've looked to try to control your use. And for many of us, I think most of us, that list is going to be long and unsuccessful.
Wow.
Or if it is successful, it's successful only for a very short time, right?
Well, I think when someone says to me, well, Weight Watchers worked, I'm like, why are we sitting here?
Yeah.
It didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, I just think we can really rationalize so many things. Someone's like, well, that carnivore diet worked for me. And I'm like, it didn't. You're paying me to work. I'm working for you right now. It didn't. Like, and it's a 12-step concept of declaring powerlessness. It's really saying like, and listen, we have plenty of power, personal power. I believe in it. I love it, whatever. But there is this piece with sugar where we have to really say like, I am unemployable at fixing this problem. I'm unemployed. You would not hire me. And when you look at that list of your diet history, you're like, oh, wow, like as a business person, you're like, oh, I'm terrible at this. Look at that. Look at that list. Oh, wow. That's what happened to me. Someone had me make that list. And I was like, and I do this professionally. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm terrible at managing my eating disorder. Look at that. I really need help, and I need a different structure, and I need to really look at this with new eyes. And I had to, go look for some help. So I love this process addiction that you're talking about too. So substance addiction, we know them, right? The cocaine of it, the heroin of it, the crystal meth of it, the alcohol of it. It's the substance that gets you high. But food is a two-hitter. And the second part is the process addiction. Process addiction is sex and gambling and swiping and all of that. So it's a double dopamine. And the process of eating and the process of overeating, actually, which is very, very hard to research. I don't know that there will ever be a day that we'll be able to define a process addiction of binging. It's a longer story than I even want to tell you about, but it's a process addiction. It's the process of eating. So you have a double whammy there, and you have a double manifestation of it in your dopamine receptors. The other thing I also need to say, as we're getting all sciencey, I hope I'm not like making people's
We love it.
We love this.
So here's the other real problem with the sugar. Okay. So when you have a substance addiction is a nervous system problem, right? So we know this. The cocaine, you and I were talking about, like, so substance abuse, right in my dopamine receptors, all that, whatever. It's all up here. Food is here, and it impacts the endocrine system, right? So it's all the hormones. So it's a four-pronged thing. It's substance, it's process, it's nervous system, it's endocrine system.
Wow.
That's the diabetes of it all. So, you might not have all four of them. I've actually met people who are, food addicted, not eating disordered, who are overweight, not food addicted, who are normal weight and food. It comes in so many shapes and sizes. But here's the beauty of it. The answer to all of them is the same. Like, stop eating sugar.
Right.
And flour,
flour, yes,
and flour. Which this also to work with the the endocrine side and hormone side. It also, this addiction or the cycle that we're trying to continually fight and fill at the same time is that this shame cycle, right? Which is like what you talk so much about in the book, and it's like. And so talk about that as far as like what's going on there with shame and how does sugar what's that relationship to shame and sugar? And then how does that really just kind of screw us up even more?
I mean,
keep coming back for more, I guess, right?
Well, I think that's more of that like diet cycle, right? It's like we find in like our soul, we find a way to say, okay, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try again. And the thing I actually think is really important here is that it's like the diet failed you. Like you didn't fail the diet. When you look at how bad this relationship with food is, like this relationship status exam, when you look at that, I think the thing I want people to understand is that so often they've been diagnosed with strep throat and they're just taking Advil, you know what I mean? Or they're just taking like a cough drop and they're like, I still have strep throat. And it's like, no shit. Like you're not, I always say like, you have to find a solution as big as your problem. And I think diet culture totally fucks with us here, right? Because they're like, just do a 7-day cleanse. Like, you're good. And I'm like, oh my God, a 7-day cleanse makes addiction worse. It progresses in addiction, to be honest, because you quit and then the addiction comes back stronger, right? And I'm always like, what do we do on day 8?
Yeah, like stronger cravings or something like that. Because you just
like, talk about dissonance cleanse. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll do a cleanse instead of dealing with my larger addiction, right? Of course. Yeah. So I say this because diet culture or that it breeds shame. Like it breeds shame, right? Because shame says there's something wrong with me.
Oof. Yeah.
Right. And so diet culture breeds shame. Period. Because you're like, I don't know how we do this. And like, God bless our earnest souls. Am I right? Because you're like, I had this client the other day and I read her chart and she was like, I've seen 20 nutritionists. I've tried 7 programs. And somehow I didn't look at the date of birth. I don't know. I was like distracted, probably too excited, Jon. And I got on the Zoom and it's a 20-year-old girl. And it's hard to impress me because I've been doing this so long. And I said, oh my God, I was certain you were going to be a 55-year-old woman. I had absolute certainty. And she's like, no, why? I was like, because I just read your diet history and I can't believe you even came to see me. Like, God bless you. You know what I mean? So because diet culture says, do this thing and you will be all better. Now, listen, there's no such thing as all better. We're on a mindfulness podcast. There ain't.
Yeah, that's true. It's always a practice, always work in progress.
Yep, that ain't the thing, right? Pema Chodron. We got Pema Chodron next to me being like, there's no way. It's not possible. So that's the first problem is that our dissonance is like totally a 7-day cleanse, heal. It's like, nope, right? And in fact, if you're in more of an eating disorder space, in fact, eating disorders are actually the hallmark of eating disorders is times of relapse, right? That's just like happens. I had a patient this morning and she said, it's back. And I said, well, yeah, it comes back. And then we deal with it. And, you know, the practice of it all, right? And great. I'm so proud of you. You got it at level 1. We're not even like a little thing. We're just putting out a little cigarette on the floor. There's no forest fire here. So of course it breeds shame. Right? Because I earnestly open up myself to the idea that I'm going to work with this nutritionist or I'm going to try this conventional diet, right? That diet fails me. There's no like, you know, process circle of like, hey, we're really sorry. You know, you're sicker than we thought you were. So obviously I take it to mean there's something wrong with me. I'm fat for life. I can't do this. I'm never going to get well. Something's wrong with me. Repeat that 5 times. Repeat. And by the way, when I worked in my boarding school, I tell my brain I deserve this treat since I eat good most of the time. I just can I talk about that?
Please.
Go for it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that the languaging is so important there. Like, and I don't think we think through the treat, Susie. I mean, that's what I would say. Like, if you really evaluated that treat, if you really said, is that really a treat? Right? Does it do to you what a treat does? Because usually with sugar, it comes at a cost. It's not neutral, right? If I'm like, oh, I'm going to go get a massage or I'm going to go sit in a bath. And there's chapters of this in the book. Like those are actually treats. They treat me well. I'm done. But those treats, by the way, in an intensity perspective, live in like 6 and 7, right? It's not a 10 treat, but it also doesn't give me like a bottomed out 1 perspective. So I'm always so mindful about, and listen, I mean, I'm training this dog behind me. What am I doing to train him?
Giving him treats.
You got it. So, here we are.
Yeah.
This is real life podcast.
That's right. We go
Real
live.
Yeah.
There's a dog in the background. Has to go out. My dog has to come in and out all day, every day when I'm home. It's ridiculous.
It's so inconvenient. But this is life in our new world.
Life is lifey, right?
Life is lifey. So I think this thing about breeding shame, like, Will, of course it breeds shame, because the messaging we're getting and and what it takes to remessage that does take effort. And these brains are so devolved, right? So I had a man on my podcast, What You're Craving, Michael Moss. He wrote a book called Hooked. And it's all about big food, and it's all about the food industry and how it just totally has us hooked. Like,
Yeah.
That guy said, and he wrote the book Sugar, Salt, Fat. And he said to me, Molly, when I wrote Sugar, Salt, Fat, if you had said to me that food was addicted, I'd be like, he's like, that's a little intense. He's like, after writing Hooked, he's like, hands down, so addictive. We are so up against something here. And he reminded me of our evolutionary process in which we do things that are easy, right? So in fact, like, it's easier to eat the dead antelope on the street as an animal than it is to like go and kill an antelope, right? Because I was asking him about intuitive eating. I said, so as you're explaining this, intuitive eating is not really a thing. He's like, I don't even know what that is, but like, no, because our intuition doesn't really work when it comes to food. And I think if it does work, the level of mindfulness that we need to have. Here's a quick story. One of my best friends is she's also my agent. She's like a longtime Buddhist. So she has like a meditation practice. Like, I mean, certainly shames me, and I do transcendental meditation. I mean, she is as Buddhist as they get, So we're all in Cape Cod. I'm with her kids, and everybody's eating like all this chocolate. I'm not eating chocolate. That's not my food. And Stephanie says to me later, she said, well, I was going to eat the chocolate, but then I had to get really quiet and think to myself, well, I'm not going to have that. All I'm saying is this longtime Buddhist meditator almost had the chocolate, but really dug deep. Like, that's not life. Talk about life getting lifey, So really declaring sugar as a problem is useful in the society that we live in. And I think with the evolution of our brains that we're given, when we want it quick, we want it easy, we live in a quick, easy society, whatever. So to go back to Will's question on shame, it breeds shame. Diet failure breeds shame. Yeah. Trying something that is not that is a lower grade solution than the problem that you have breeds shame. Right. And yet, people are very ingrained. And I think diet culture is the essence of dissonance. Mm-hmm. Diet culture and cleanses are the essence of dissonance, because they sell us something much easier than I have to be like cute and funny about this, because I'm like selling kind of unfortunate news, right?
When we advertise this, people are like, no, you're going to take away our sugar.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You don't take away my sugar now.
Right, like, I'm good, thanks guys. Right, so it has to be like funny and cute or something.
But you mentioned the food industry, and something that I had as a banner on the screen there for a second was about the bliss point, and I'll bring it back. Can you speak about the bliss point, what it is, and then what it does to us physiologically that basically shuts down the ability to feel full?
Yeah, I think what I'd say, like, as a really general statement, like whether or not you're like, shit, am I a food addict? There are billions and billions of dollars plowed into the labs trying to figure out this bliss point, right? Trying to figure out, well, how sweet and how salty and how fatty are we going to make it so that they will buy more? Mm-hmm. There are people who are paid so much money to help us. I'm so sorry, guys.
Oh, good.
We love it. Good. That's what we love about this show, is it's real.
And I think it's interesting that I'll just jump in as Molly takes care of her dog, but they actually use this term in the industry, right? Bliss point. This is actually an industrial term.
But then it came out. I think it was a secret, and then it came out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So where were we before?
Talking
my
about
dog
Bliss
decided
Point
to
and how
decide?
they've
I mean, God bless them. I mean, you got to say about the dogs, guys, they're just trying to protect us. Like a car just came in.
Yeah.
Like,
And
it's
please
a sweet
us.
All
thing.
love.
It's a gesture is what I'm saying, you know? Let's see. I grew up with shame for not eating enough. Yes. Growing up on a farm. I agree. I think the thing that Richard's saying over here, like he's saying, listen, I have some core values around food that say, I have to be overfull. I have to finish everything on my plate. I think that there's a lot about core values that we come into.
I'm that way. I've got kids and they don't finish what's on the plate. I finish what's on their plate because I grew up being told you must finish everything on your plate, because if you don't, there are kids in X, Y, or Z who are starving. But what does my finishing what's on my plate have to do with any of that? But it literally ingrained a value in my mind that we will not throw away food.
Yeah, and I
get what Richard's saying.
What Michael Moss was saying, like in his book, because it's his research is so good about this. Like he's like, when you think about going with your dad to a baseball game and eating that hot dog or getting that ice cream with your mother on Cape Cod in the summer, like that is creating neural pathways that are so unbeatable. Like what Susie's saying, she's like, yeah, we all get together and have dessert. What are you saying to me? Like, don't do that, Molly. And I'm like, I'm actually saying that. If this is your problem, it's about creating new ways to ritualize in community that don't have to do with sugar. I mean, that's challenging. And yet I haven't had sugar or flour in 12 years, just if we're playing a game here, imperfectly, but I mean, not by virtue, by the way, right? By necessity, but
the way I picture it is coming back to that relationship, right? So if you're out with a bunch of friends and if you could imagine a relationship that just didn't work, somebody who had a partner who was abusive, like, okay, let's say the partner is mine and that partner is abusive, and I sit down at a table, I no longer have my partner because I know that partner is abusive, and now that partner is with my friend. But for some reason in that relationship, it works, right? Okay. Well, I'm not going to tell them, hey, break up. It's not working, but I'm not going to move over to that side of the table and suddenly start having a relationship with that person again. Right. So coming back to Susie's comment, and that it's such a social thing too. You go out with your family and friends to celebrate together, and sugar is always coming into play, but you have to understand.
Yeah. I mean, this is also like where I just do think like, it's so hard. Like this is in my personal story, and this is what I wrote in the book, right? It's like sugar just seemed to be my solution. Sugar was my solution to everything, and sugar was inclusive. And when my father died, sugar nurtured me and nourished me. I mean, it was the last house on the block that I wanted to move into. I mean, I'm an addictions person. I'm an eating disorder. Like you think that no one ever told me about pre-diabetes, and I was like, oh, maybe it's the sugar. Like it was so the last thing that I wanted to look at. And it's such a denial, such an adaptive mechanism, right? The thing I think we're forgetting here is when you really have the problem, the solution works really well. And as someone who is, people say to me, well, you just don't want that cake. And I'm like, literally, I don't. Because to think about what my life looks like today and to think about adding sugar back in makes no sense to me whatsoever. It makes no sense to me. And also, like, I've eaten all the cake. All the cake, Jon, all the cake.
Yeah.
Costco cake. I've eaten all of it. And it's not enough. You know what I mean? Someone said to me, well, eat a pint of ice cream. I was like, which one's that? They're like, four. I was like, oh, okay. What else did you do? Like, that's not even exciting to me. That's like kind of a certain like a Ben and Jerry's. Like, that's kind of like, you know, like that's how I do this game. And that it really speak of mindfulness. Like it doesn't like I'm not present. I am constantly seeking. I am never happy. I am not I'm just not available. And I think we don't look at those consequences when it comes to food and not to put words in the mouth, but I think so often we're actually thinking about the consequences to others. Like we're like, well, how am I going to go to my friend's birthday party? It's like, I mean, I'm usually going to my friend's birthday party. If I'm eating cake, I'm not even there. I'm just like, I'm on a date with the cake. You know, I'm going to.
Right. Yeah.
You ever
That's
go
such
to
a great
dinner
way of putting
with
it.
like a new couple and they're just like zooming at each other's eyes and you're like, guys, like we're here too. It's like, that's me at the party. Like, I'm just like, hey, is it time for cake? Like, are we eating cake? Is it cake? Like, are we doing that now? And I know I don't drink either. And I have the same story with alcohol, right? I'm sitting at the dinner. I'm like, wait, so she's having 2 glasses. I'm having 2. Can I get one more glass? I'm not there. Like, we're talking about men and mindfulness. Like, I'm not present at all in that story.
You mentioned alcohol there. And in the book, you talk about physiologically how your body recognizes sugar and what it does with sugar. Can you talk about the similarities between alcohol and sugar and how your body processes those?
Yeah, but I think sugar and alcohol are a molecule away. I mean, they're literally nearly the same exact thing. And in fact, the thing I love to talk about most of all, which is artificial sweeteners, right? Sugars, I like to call them. I mean, they're really distilling sugar alcohol. They're like distilling that's what sugar alcohol is, right? And so in all of in our, our beautiful society trying to like let us have our cake and eat it too, they're actually harming us so much more significantly by putting all this processed, really cancer-causing stuff into our food and messing with our taste buds. Like, do you know that Splenda I'm not sure exactly of the data. I don't have it in front. Are 600 times as sweet as sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was shocked when I read that. Yeah. I was like, wow.
What did you
Bliss Point.
Did you read the stevia one? Because then everyone's like, yeah, but I have stevia. I'm like, still 200 times. Like, so this artificial sweetener stuff is like so messing our ability to eat a banana. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need, I hate that I'm this person because like morbidly obese Molly's like rolling her eyes when I say things like this, like my really like morbidly obese self. But like I'll eat a banana every now and then or like a mango and I'm like, damn, but like someone who's like deep in like putting 3 Splenda into their coffees, eating a banana, like there's no bliss. Talk about bliss point. You can't get a bliss point from that because and also, the artificial
dopamine's not there either.
The hunger, because when you're not putting calories in your body, right? It's like your body's like, I need more food, and then the other one is not my area of expertise, but I really wish it was, is what the artificial sweetener and the sugar does to your gut health, right? Destroys gut bacteria, which I think is like the only thing that's going to matter pretty soon is our gut health.
Yeah.
We have.
Also flour. I mean, we haven't really, I was really kind of shocked in the book when you are equating sugar and flour as processed flour. So talk about, and as basically the same substance because it actually has the same biological and physiological effect as sugar. And I was like, what? Because I love pizza. I'm not a big sugar person, but I'll eat a slice.
Oh my God, Will, that's like literally what people say to me. They're like, well, I'm not really into sugar. I was like, you into our pasta? They're like, totally. You into bread? Oh my God, yes. I was like, okay, same problem. And you know what's so sad about America? When I was selling this book, one of the publishing houses was like, "Can you take the flour part out of the book? I'm more interested in it." And I was like, "I cannot do that."
Yeah,
but I understand
because they're the same.
Okay, so here's the story, Morning Glory. Let's say I bought us all cacao plants and we just chewed on them, right?
Yeah.
We would have the same reaction. Like if I chewed on a cacao plant, I would be like, it would be a little high, like a little half a cup of coffee, something like that, right? If I grounded that up and we snorted it or even we ate it, you know what ground up cacao is, right? It's cocaine, right? So the same can be said, same thing with something with opium, right? If we were like, had a little poppy muffin or something, whatever, some poppy, okay, whatever, no big deal. Grind up that poppy, I'm stealing from my grandmother. You know what I mean? For more poppy.
Right.
So the same can be said with wheat. Like, honestly, like even with Ezekiel bread, something natural sprouted, right? Or brown rice, you grind that up into pasta. It's the same exact, and it's the brain chemistry of it is exactly the same. And what I actually find really interesting for some people, well, Richard's like, can I just substitute sugar for cocaine? I was on a podcast once and they said, sugar is as addictive as cocaine. What do you think? I said, I think you've never had cocaine then. Whatever it's worth. Anyway, back to my flour thing. So Because it is, but it isn't, right? It's like, it's the same thing. It's on the installment plan. And so, yeah, I mean, so when you grind up grain, your brain reads it as sugar. And I think I think that's exactly what you're saying, which is, I'm not really a sweet tooth guy, but if you put a pizza in front of me, I might not be able to stop. I mean, me too.
I didn't realize like that's like, I really love pizza. Like I kind of like I'm a connoisseur of pizza throughout the city, but not realizing now I'm realizing like, oh, one of the reasons I like pizza so much is because of what it does to my brain chemistry. It really just, it gives me that like, oh my God, it's so delicious, but it's really the flour and how it's affecting my brain. I mean, I love the sauce and sausage sometimes and stuff like that on my pizza, but it's just like, wow. And now I'm like analyzing like, well, maybe I shouldn't have.
No, so this is exactly what I wanted to. I'm so glad you said that last part, because I am so cautious about villainizing food, and I'm really cautious about pathologizing people. And I know you pretty well, and like, I just don't think you have a food addiction.
No, I'm like, I love good, healthy food.
Stop eating pizza, because I think you can stop. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can stop. Like, I think you're like just a really, like, I just don't think you have the thing. Like, and I'm like always happy to tell people that, because like, I think people think I'm like the sugar czar, and I'm like, smoke them if you got them. Like, again, like, I just can't do it. Like, I can't do it. You and me eating pizza is like the greatest case study in watching an addict and a non-addict eat. Right? Like,
just like an alcoholic and
I love the sauce. Like, ooh, this mozzarella is better than that. And I'm like, so where do we get more? Like, I'll keep
I'm the same. Again, coming back to kids, we buy some sweets to, treat our kids when they go potty or whatever.
Right.
And then my wife's like, hey, where's the potty treats? I'm like, oh, that whole bag of family size M&Ms. Oh yeah, I ate that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because I just have no control around sugar.
And I have such a shame response to that. Like, and I'm such a people pleaser. Like, I'll just make sure I get like 5 bags so I can just like not make anyone unhappy or catch me about it. Back in the day.
I got a story, and when I was going to postgraduate school, my roommate will appreciate this story. He went away for a weekend, and I opened the refrigerator, and there were some dark chocolate peanut butter cups in the freezer, and I ate the entire thing. And he had eaten maybe 2 or 3, and I ate the entire thing. And I went to the store, bought another one to replace it, put it in the freezer, ate a few just to make it look like it was the same one. Ate that entire thing,
I love that.
And then went back. So, I need to break up with sugar.
I'm your sister from another mother. Well, this thing that Nathan was saying over on the side, which is
that's my brother-in-law.
That's who's that?
Nathan White is my brother-in-law.
More family. Wow, we're all family here. Look at this.
Welcome. So Nathan's saying this thing, which is so true, which he's saying, this is so poignant. Sugar is the most addictive substance and an epidemic. I agree with that. The problem we're up against is very much what everyone else is saying, and it's societal, and nobody actually teaches us how to break up with it, but also how to mess that up and come back to it, right? So because I think that's really where so like, listen, and I think the truth of this is like the opiate epidemic is also like a real epidemic, and the people who are making progress in the opiate epidemic are people who are understanding that for many people, relapse is a part of that story. And so they're actually looking at this, like, so that when people go out with opiates, they do it in a more controlled way. They have Narcan, they have all of this stuff. And I think that the way that we're looking at the sugar epidemic is through the lens of dieting, which is crazy. It's actually so crazy. And so if we're looking, I interviewed a guy, Robert Lustig, who's such an interesting person. And I said, if you could do one thing to end this epidemic, what would you do? This is a total side note. And he said, I would stop all subsidies. I would stop all farming subsidies, because if we stop farming subsidies, then we would have to be doing things different with our food. But that's not my expertise in any way. But I think if you're looking at it from my expertise, which is individual people, the thing I would teach you is, this is an AA concept. You could be doing something at 4:00 in the afternoon and be doing something totally different at 4:01. And I write that in the book, which is about you aim to quit. And if you can't meet that, and I'm sure in the Navy, I'm sure in your experience, there is something so close to this, you aim for your absolute best every single day. If you don't do it, you just try to do your best. It's like, what would we do if we understood that we had this problem? We saw it as a problem of our spirit. We saw it as a problem of our mind. We saw it as a problem of our physicality. And then we just tried to do our best all of the time. And if we fell short, we were compassionate with ourselves, we were thoughtful, we made a corrective action plan, and we just came back to it. I mean, this is the mindfulness. I mean, this is really your podcast. About this,
the reason I'm laughing is compassion. Self-compassion is something Will and I talk about on almost every episode.
Right.
We've even considered jokingly changing the name of the show to Men Talking Compassion.
But I think it is we are so oriented because of diet culture to think that we're the problem in that moment, right? So it's exactly what it's like. We are so oriented to just say, I ate my kids' food, I'm a bad person. And then our reaction to that is to go eat more of the kids' food until you're sick, or your wife says, honey, the pants, or you get shaken, or you just get that one moment of grace where you say, okay, I'll try again. But then you try the thing that isn't going to work because it isn't fitting the problem, right? When truly, if we turned on our brains about this, is that, okay, I have all this research, I see it. Okay, I took that quiz. Okay, now I'm going to just really, trying our best is such an underrated virtue. I'm going to really try my best.
Well, I think the compassion, I feel, is like that ultimate relationship that we're really trying. I mean, so if we're trying to break up with sugar, we're definitely going to fall short. But if I'm more compassionate with myself, and that means I'm more kind to myself, therefore I'm going to allow myself to fall short, but also have the, probably wanting to maybe, go ahead.
Well, we're curious. Like when we're compassionate, it opens curiosity. Like that's what I call it. I call it the 3 C's, right? I get compassionate, I get curious, and then I can make a corrective action plan. Like I said this to one of my patients. I was dealing with a patient today. She's bulimic, and we were talking about her. Ingestion of diuretics, and I said, "Listen," I said, "I know how hard it would be to report to me how many diuretics you're going to take in a week." And I said, "Here's just what I want to promise you: if you take 12 packs of Dulcolax, like." I'm just going to I know that you have a really good reason for it. And I just want to understand why. And that's where our work is going to start, because that's just like, I'm sure in that moment when you ate the cupcake, there was a really good reason why. But when we move right into shame and self-harm and unworthiness, to bring Tara Brock into our podcast, it's gone. And all it does is reinforce that you should just go numb more. Right. But if it's like, I wonder what happened there. What made me vulnerable to doing that?
Right.
What would it look like if I didn't do that again?
Yeah, compassion kind of pulls us into the middle ground of that curiosity, instead of being like, oh, I fucked up again, so now I feel shameful, and then I'm more likely to eat sugar again, or like be more of an addict. Whereas like that compassion kind of, like you said, opens up that curiosity and that opportunity for change.
Well, yeah, and I think diet culture and diet failure has really put us into this, like self-hate's an addiction in its own thing. Like even someone said in this thing, like, I'm good, I'm bad. I mean, it's become so moral. And I do love us talking about the science, because it's not moral at all. It's actually incredibly biological and spiritual. Like it's so not moral. It's so far from moral. And the more we make it moral, the less solvable it becomes, because that shame and morality kind of live on the same plane,
Wow. Well, I mean, it's also part of one thing we like to talk about on the podcast, and you really eloquently and beautifully break out into the book, is the coping, right? Long-term and short-term coping skills in order to, so it's nice. What Jon and I are creating here is opportunity to become more mindful of whatever aspect of your life that can not use a little bit more analysis, or just kind of a little bit more observation, so you can make changes in order to improve your life and be a better person and try again, like we mentioned, like tomorrow, where the short and long-term goals these are the opportunities, these are these mindfulness moments. Okay, I know I want sugar, or that cupcake, or that pizza, or and then it's like, okay, what do I do in the short term? I thought it was interesting you splash cold water in your face as a short-term coping skill, right? And then you also have long-term.
An ice pack is life. Well, I think the other thing I say in that chapter, which arguably is the most important thing. It changed me so much. It's from me being trained as a dialectical behavioral therapist. My teacher, the creator, the treatment creator, she says this very clear thing, which is, as long as the problem behavior is on the table, change is impossible. What she means by that is, as long as food is on the table as a coping skill,
there you go.
You're not taking a bubble bath. And I would argue it just from my dopamine high friend, Namaste, and Jon, it's like, listen, if I can get a high in a moment and that's available to me, a numb or a high, a dopamine, whatever, like, I'm not, like, a bubble bath ain't doing it for me. And the only time a bubble bath, a journal, a call to a friend, an ice pack is ever going to work is when that food is off the table. And I want to say, and this is very controversial, love me or hate me, but I actually say all food. Because in this moment right now, if you said to me, Molly, do you want some baby carrots or do you want to listen to a Spotify mix? I'm like, baby carrots, please. That's
right.
Please. You know what I mean? So,
well, I'd imagine even just the same action of chewing and eating and consuming food, right, gives the same chemistry, same process, right? Whereas, like, okay, no, I'm not going to. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like that's kind of that's that process.
That we there's this idea in DBT that we call like perceived competence, and I think perceived competence when it comes to skills is like a big thing. I think we think we're smarter than we are, and like right. So it's like ugh. And I just know it for me because I didn't start using skills until I was like 32 being trained in DBT, but like it seems so simple, but you actually have to like practice it, and you have to practice it when you're in an urge to have sugar. If you haven't practiced listening to a Spotify mix or putting ice in your neck, like I could be standing in your kitchen being like, hey, you want a free session? You'd be like, get the fuck out of the way. I want my sugar.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Beeline to the sugar. Yeah.
That's the same with
practice it. So Stephen's saying this really interesting thing over in the corner where he's saying that his wife loves to bake and she makes amazing cakes. I mean, count me in. And it takes all of his strength to avoid eating. And strength is this is, willpower is a 15-minute intervention. Did you know that? So if
what is it? Yeah, break that down. Yeah.
On our strength, if we're only relying on our willpower, we're totally screwed. Stephen could be Superman. Stephen could be Superman, and it's 15 minutes. If that's the only thing we're using is our willpower, I'm holding on in the AA community called white knuckling. Eventually, that's willpower. Willpower is an emergency skill. And so that's the other piece of this is that we're not orienting ourselves to what we know works, which is the first thing I actually think works more than anything is a bright line. Bright line goes a long way. So declaring that knowing that you don't eat sugar makes life a whole lot easier. I know it doesn't seem that way, but I actually think the brighter the line, the easier the process. Because I just look at a lot of foods and I'm just like, yeah, not my food. And I need to say to y'all, like, I eat like a queen. I live for my food. I love it. It loves me back. Like game fucking on. You know what I'm saying? But a bright line goes a long way. Cause like if I was in his kitchen, I wouldn't be able to be in his kitchen. I wouldn't stay in the kitchen that long. I'd probably talk to my wife about it. I really would, but that's just me. And I would try to stay away from it because there's so many hunger cues that come. I mean, it's such a complicated thing. I'd have bright lines. I'd have skills. I'd be outside. I mean, you have to kind of hustle on that. Stephen must be such a strong person if he's not eating those cakes because the strength of sugar and the strength of cake and the strength of the emotional attachment to that's so insane. Cake is something you eat as a kid. Wife is someone you love. Looking at it deliciously, smelling it. I mean, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, that guy might actually be Superman if he's not eating that cake. Without a plan. And as they say, what do they say over there? Fail to plan, plan to fail. I mean,
right.
And coming back to
overrides willpower every single day.
Right. True. And that willpower is, you can have less and less willpower. Like if you're tired at the end of the day, or if you've made a whole lot of decisions, right? Decision fatigue plays into your willpower. It degrades your willpower. So I think they've done a study on where they had somebody memorize, 3 numbers versus memorizing 10 numbers, and then walk down the hall. And as they were walking down the hall, they passed a stack of pastries. And the people who memorized 10 numbers grab the pastries more often than the people who memorize 3.
Absolutely.
Because you have only so much willpower, and it gets degraded by just about everything we do. Molly, I'm not sure how much time you have.
I know. I
How
probably
you
have to
doing?
go in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
that's
need
cool.
to say something about that because people are like, I'm such a broken record with like patience, and it's like literally planning and bright lines. Like if you really like, what should I do right now? I'd be like, start to plan your food and start to create some bright lines, because that's really what overrides decision fatigue. That's how you and again, like meditation, it's like that's really how you get these new neural pathways in. Like everyone's like, do you still plan your food? And my answer is kind of, right? Because I've done it for 12 years. I don't even think that I do, but I do. I know what I'm eating for lunch today. I know what I'm probably having for dinner. Like it's always in there, but it's because I created a neural pathway where that happens. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Wow.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
No,
please.
my God, please.
Okay. So here's this other thing.
You're funny. Okay. I love how you set yourself up, Molly. You're amazing. It's good.
So I'm like such a smarty. I'm like, so
I know.
people talk about wisdom and binging. And people say, well, if I'm really kind and generous to myself, then I'm going to be binging my brains out. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, I need to be hard on myself, right? If I radically accept how bad this thing is, then I'm just going to be eating my brains out. I'm not actually going to be able to fix it. Does that make sense to you guys? And I think there's a lot of this where once you have the information, that becomes your wisdom, right? And so the idea of why would mindfulness and compassion and kindness really work? And it's like, well, if you create this home base full of knowledge and what works for you, then your game, this is what I think about meditation. I think once you learn the information and you learn what food works for you, you learn what food doesn't work for you and everything in between, then actually the name of the game after that is mindfulness, right? My teacher's definition of mindfulness is refocusing the attention back to your wisdom, right?
Love that.
I know she's the dopest. She's also a Zen Buddhist master, Marsha Linehan. And so it's like, that's just, I mean, truly, I really think that's like the game of the game. That is why I'm such a huge proponent of mindfulness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's, but it's like so much of everything we've talked about today is understanding what is your relationship to food, to flour, right? I mean, sugar for sure, you know.
Well, it's like flour.
Well, I know pizza. God damn it.
I was like, please don't make me stop eating pizza.
Yeah, I know, right. But knowing where you are, I mean, that's a big part of the awareness with mindfulness is knowing where you are and being, you know, and you have to be authentic and honest with yourself where you are, right? And then working for ways, right? I mean, and it's probably getting help is probably, if you really have a very vicious cycle with sugar and flour, and then seeking help, I think would be probably the best option. Becoming
There's some LinkedIn user who's saying this thing that I have to say something to, which is saying, can you tell me your mind control? And I think the other thing we were like kind of I hope we didn't miss the boat on is when I stopped eating sugar and flour, my wisdom came out of the ICU. I don't actually have a lot of mind control because my brain works really well now and my endocrine system's incredibly regulated that like I don't actually need a lot of control because I surrendered everything. Talk about like the mindfulness of it all, right?
Right.
So of course, and I really am grateful for Susie because thank God the intermittent fasting question comes up, because when in the world does intermittent fasting not come up when I'm talking to somebody? Here's the deal with intermittent fasting. If you have an eating disorder, you can't be intermittent fasting because it's eating disordered. And so if it's and I'm a behaviorist by trade, and the truth is you can't teach a dog to sit and give you its paw at the very same time. And so I would say you work on the sugar addiction and then you see if you need the intermittent fasting.
Wow. There you go.
Because the other was then it's just diet culture. It's like too much noise. I hate noise. I'm a meditator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Well, Molly,
thank you, Molly.
I love you guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate having you here. And normally we wrap it up with a closing practice. I don't know if you have time for that, but before, if we do, if we don't, I want to
do like 30 seconds. Could we do 30 seconds?
But
something's always better than nothing. Am I right?
That's right.
I agree.
And I do also just want to put out a couple plugs for what it is you're doing. So if you're watching, if you're listening, tune into Molly Carmel's podcast, What You're Craving, where Molly gets real and raw with her guests about underlying issues causing drama in the relationship with food, dieting, and body image.
Yeah. The other thing we're doing right now is having a lot of like real life stories on. I'm like
Nice.
very into like real life stories.
Yeah,
Oh,
perfect.
excellent.
There you go. And those episodes are released every Wednesday. And then she's also hosting virtual, I'm hoping I pronounced this right, Intensati classes.
Yes, Intensati. Did you know that, Will?
No,
It's
I didn't know that. God damn, that's awesome.
It's so great because you know what? I realized how deeply spiritual this Intensati is. A spiritual fitness class where we put self-affirming mantras and movement together. It's such a game. I'm such a cynic, and it's such a game changer. And it's actually just pay what you can. Like, I don't even care if people pay for it. I think it's such a powerful practice.
Wow. And how do people find this? That's on your website?
Yeah, everything's on mollycarmel.com or on my social channels. Everything's at Molly Carmel, mollycarmel.com, at Molly Carmel. I'm so easy to find.
Easy enough.
You,
we love it.
Awesome.
We love it.
Awesome.
Well, I'll just do a very simple. We're going to take just a simple cleansing practice, a nice releasing kind of the episode kind of practice. We're going to simply just follow along with me. So close your eyes if you like, if that's safe for you, and find a comfortable seat with a nice straight spine, or stand up tall if you're whatever you're doing out there when you're listening to our podcast. Let's exhale the breath out. We're going to take 2 inhales, right? So we're going to take one big inhale, hold that, and then take another little bump through the nose. Take another inhale and open your mouth and exhale out. We're just going to do 2 more of those. Take a big inhale. Try to fill the whole torso. Let's pause for a second. Take another one through the nose and exhale out. Awesome. And 1 more of those. Big inhale. Keep filling up more breath. Hold for a second. Take another inhale and exhale out. Good. Just take a moment, just check in how you're feeling now, if that has changed anything of how you're feeling or whatever's going on in the world around you. And Molly, thank you so much for joining us today.
All day. I love you guys.
I know.
We really enjoyed
I'm
this.
totally going
Thanks
to
so
use
much.
that in Intensati. I love that breath thing. That was so good.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's a great way to just release anxiety. So, I mean, maybe that could be one of your coping things, if you want to rush for sugar.
I'm putting that into my toolbox right this minute, Will.
Oh yeah. Great. Right. And that's kind of what I was, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Just do a couple of those breaths, and that can maybe, move you beyond that, grabbing for those Twinkies or something like that. And so, Molly, anything else before we go?
What's that? Anything else?
Anything else before we go?
Yeah, right. Just like, one thing I have to say. You might think that this is impossible, and it's not. And I've been an addictions therapist a long time. And I know one thing for sure. You never actually know which attempt at quitting is going to work. And that is why we just make this commitment. It's the 2nd chapter of my book, that we never, ever, ever give up on ourselves. If you have this knowing that sugar is a problem, it is. And all you do is make this commitment to be open-minded, continue trying, and never, ever, ever give up on yourself. That's
there you go. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much,
Love
Molly.
you guys. Mwah.
Been a pleasure. Take care.
Awesome. Be well, Molly. Great to see you.
Love you.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.